Today is Friday, which means we get the developer Q&A for Eve Echoes, or rather we normally do, but for the past couple of weeks we haven't. I suppose that's to do with the Chinese Lunar New Year festivals and all of that going on, that we just haven't had these. But the developers do seem to have made it up to us. We have 4 pages of this to go through, so I am pretty much just going to jump right in. Please though, if you have any thoughts and opinions regarding these questions or the answers, or indeed my responses to them, let me know in the comment section down below, and please do hit like on the video, it does really help. Anyway, without further ado then, here is the weekly developer Q&A for the 10th of January through to the 30th of January, 20 days worth of questions. Question number 1 then, will you update the search bar feature? Because when we're about to find an item on our assets, including those not in the ship current station, we have to scroll down first before we can find that item. Please, we need an all-round search system, so we just need to type the item and it will just pop up and what station systems it located. Bit of a mealy-mouthed way of saying that the personal assets tab is a bit laggy and you have to kind of scroll through everything and manually browse. Can we just get an all-round search option? Now, Wei Su, who is the lead developer on this, says, we're looking for a simpler solution because retrieving a large number of items in personal assets is very complicated in operation. We need to find a simpler solution with our technical team. Again, this is one of those things I talk about a lot in the Dev Q&A series and just in general, that people misunderstand or underestimate how difficult programming something can actually be. To most people, it's just, oh, just add a search bar, lol. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world. But anyone with a history of programming will tell you that that can actually be a surprisingly complex issue, and it can cause a lot of data parsing. Basically, when you type in, it's going to be trying to search and find all of these items from every station there is. There's not really an easy way to do this. So it's one of those, it's not quite as simple as it looks. It is something that's been requested many times, and the developers have said that they are looking into it. Yes, I agree it's a feature we need. I really agree it's a feature we need, but it's not quite that simple. Hopefully it is something that gets added. Question number 2, will we be getting Tech 2 ships in Eve Echoes? Some people might be getting bored of flying the regular frigates like Interceptors, and T2 frigates like the Wolf from EO would be a nice suggestion. Different battleships and Marauders would also add a different playstyle, as well as being more powerful than regular battleships, but not as deadly as Dreadnoughts. Now again, this is a bit of a weird question because we have T2 ships. The Hound, all the stealth bombers, those are Tech 2 ships. Interceptors, which you mentioned in your question, are Tech 2 ships. Ultimately, we just have them named differently in Eve Echoes, to the point that things like, for example, the Stabber 2 is technically the Vagabond. They're not one-to-one, of course, and Marauders are technically Strikers. Like, again, I know there are always people who argue the toss with me on that. I'm not saying, oh, they replace it or they do the same job, but they are intended to essentially be that same concept, just done in a different way, and whether or not you agree that way works, well, yeah, that I can side with you on. But the point is, we technically have the T2 ships in the game already. Things like a Breacher Assault, that is technically our version of the Jaguar. Yes, we lack a Rifter Assault, which would be our version of the Wolf. We have the, I'm trying to think of the names of these because crikey, it's been so long since I flew any of the assault frigates. Things like the Merlin Assault would be kind of the Hawk, but having it swapped to railguns because the Harpy is like a long-range version. We kind of have these in the game, but they're just different. They're just different. The Tech 2 ships are pretty much all there, just with different names and in some cases completely different stats, or even a different visual. As I said, there is no Breacher Assault. There is no Breacher Assault frigate in EVE Online. The Minmatar Missile Assault frigate is the Jaguar, which uses the Rifter hull, but that's how it is in EVE Echoes. Lance.Dot says, yes, we will release some new ships. We're still trying to decide in what ways we want to release them, but it's expected that some new ships will appear this year. They may not necessarily be named T2, though. When he says named T2, I think he means like they won't necessarily be called the Wolf. It would be a Rifter Assault if they launched it due to the naming conventions of EVE Echoes. I would love to see a Tristan Assault. I'd love to, because we have the railgun version, the Ishka, Enyo. I can never remember which way around those are. But basically, we've got the railgun one, and now we just need the drone one. In EVE Online, there is a drone frigate that uses the Incursus hull. Obviously, again, like I've said, we have the Breacher assault instead of the Jaguar, so I imagine we'd have a Tristan assault instead of that one. We would normally have the Hawk and the Harpy, but it looks like we're having the Harpy as a short-ranged version with the Merlin assault, which means we'd need a Kestrel assault, we'd need a Tormentor assault, and we would need the... which one have I missed? I've talked about them all. I would love to see this. I would genuinely love to see this. I think there's a lot of really cool ships that could be added. There are tons that are missing completely from the tech tree. Now, look, I'm going to say now that as much as this excites me, you know as well as I do that these are all going to essentially be Tech 10 ships, which it's a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, it is something that needs to happen, but it's still not the thing that needs to happen most. Adding more stuff to Tech 10 doesn't help the fact that loads of players are leaving, and we're just not replacing them. The game is dying in the Western servers at this point in time, and adding new Tech 10 ships doesn't alleviate that. But adding anything to the lower techs means that all of those players who are sitting at Tech 10 are just like, yeah, but why would I fly that? Because I've already got this thing here. The tech system is the problem. Question number 3. I noticed Tradable Nano cores has been removed from the Trello. Why has this happened? A lot of people were looking forward to being able to trade nano cores, and a lot of people invested in the CyberX event on just one character with the expectation these would later become tradable. Oh no, bugger off with that. And now are stuck with multiple cores of no use on one toon. Mike says, we're trying to come up with a better plan. The tradable purple core benefits ordinary players, but can also be taken advantage of by farming services and hackers, so it needs to be redesigned in a more reasonable way. And yeah, I kind of agree with that. Real money transactions, RA or RMT, is a big problem in games like EVE Online, EVE Echoes, even World of Warcraft and all these kind of MMOs. You might think, oh, it's harmless, I'm basically just paying someone to farm the gold for me. No, you're not. You're paying someone who hacks into other people's accounts, takes over actual players' accounts, turns them into bots, and basically destroys the in-game economy to do so. And EVE Echo's in-game economy is pretty, wrecked as it is, so adding, stuff that RMT can suddenly get into does make it even worse. I genuinely here, right, these days I am not the first to jump to NetEase's defense, but Mike has a very good point here. That said, if you were buying purple stuff during the CyberX event on just one character with the expectation it would later become tradable, I'm sorry, there's no polite way to say this, you're an idiot. You have made, expensive decisions based on a maybe. Trello has always been a maybe. It's not a this is coming, it's a this is our plan, and plans freaking change. I do sympathize if you've done that, and you might be able to contact customer services and get a refund and clearly explain what stupid decision you made that led to that point, but the bottom line is never do stuff like that. Never do stuff like that. Until the system is in the game, don't bother, until it's been confirmed at the very least. Trello is not a confirmation, and I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I know it must suck if you are one of those people. I'm not laughing at you, I'm merely saying, don't do that. Really don't do that. Question number 4. For many, organizational activities mostly take place at the alliance level or larger, yet several useful functions are locked at corporation level, wallets and organizational missions and markets, for example. Will you make these functions available at an alliance level to assist activities such as pooling alliance ISK and materials buyback programs? Weisu responds, again, lead developer, there is no such plan for the time being. We don't want to have convenient large alliance mechanisms. Players and corps can get more opportunities if the alliance size is limited. The expansion of corporation size may be considered. And this is kind of a thing. A lot of people, again, look at EVE Online and then look at EVE Echoes. And believe me, I'm guilty of this as well. I will look at EVE Online and say, well, this really works there. Why aren't we doing it here? And sometimes there is no valid answer for that. Like, I'm talking Abyssal Dead Spaces compared to Dormant Realms here, but, exploration, for example. But there are some things that you have to look at and say, well, they do it this way in EVE Echoes and they do it this way in EVE Online. Why are they doing it that way? And this is one of those actual things. EVE Online is a PC game. You have a lot more tools and implementation that you can work with on that regard. In EVE Echoes, it's supposed to be a mobile game. Tying everything to the corporation level is a design decision. Everything that's important is tied at the corporation level. Eve Echoes wants to put corporations at the front and then make the alliances the loose, alliances that band the corporations together. In EVE Online, it's very much the alliance is the big thing and the corporations are just the bricks in the wall, so to speak, where in Echoes, it's more that these are these are the actual institutions, the big things themselves, loosely threaded together at alliance level. Ultimately, we have stepped outside the game and we have modified things. It was never intended that we would have, an alliance full of corporations and then have a second alliance full of corporations occupying that same area of space and working side by side kind of thing. It was very much intended that you would have up to 20 corporations allied together and you would essentially be fighting everyone else for space. Whether or not you agree that, that design intent has come to fruition, or if it would even work in the first place, is up to you, but it is the design intent, and the design intent is corporation first in EVE Echoes, alliance secondary, stringing it together. So don't expect much to happen at the alliance level, and arguably we don't really need it to. We've all kind of got it working outside the game, right? And that's the point. The developers don't want to do stuff that, goes outside of their plan just because we're already doing it. They're just not going to ban us for doing what we're doing and just leave us to it. But the intent is corporations are the forefront. Question number 5, I think I've lost count. Can you open NCS 1 to 4 for all mining ships? Many players don't mine them because they can only enter with Venture, and because of small cargo, it's a waste of time because ships have low cargo. Go away. We will consider this suggestion. We need to discuss whether it'll affect the output system. If the impact is controllable, we will remove this restriction. Cloud, if you're listening, don't. Ignore this, don't. Don't do that. NCS 1 to 4 for all mining ships. Again, this is actually new player content. If you are a new player in EVE Echoes and you're interested in mining, then the Nihilist compressed spaces 1 to 4 are actually a pretty solid way of getting ore. High risk, high reward, or actually not really that high risk because no one really jumps into them to check for newbies farming stuff. What we need in this instance instead is perhaps more opportunities with actual bigger miners. Maybe the ventures need a buff, or rather, because we already have too much ore coming in, this comes all the way back to nerfing the Orca, nerfing the Rorqual, nerfing the Coveter, nerfing all of the mining barges right the hell back down. There is no reason that a mining barge using strip miners should be able to get more of, earn more per hour than a targeted Tech 10 ship, the Venture 4. The Venture 4 needs a bigger hold, surely, but also the strip miners need to dial things back. We have had such a power creep in mining, and people always go off at me in the comment section of this one. Feel free to, but I'm going to say the same thing I always say. Right now, ores are super common, because you can just undock a Coveter 2 with, an Orca in support and just strip mine an entire belt in, 10 minutes. There is no scarcity to any of the minerals, which means there is just massive oversupply. Anyone with a basic comprehension of standard economics understands supply and demand. If there is no increase in demand and there is infinite supply, then prices are just going to collapse. And that's what we've been seeing for a long time. And yet people still say, when are we getting ion strip miners? Hopefully freaking never. The implant was the worst thing that could have happened to mining in a long time. Adding ion strip mine, we need to dial things back. And it may cause discomfort at the personal level, but discomfort at the personal level doesn't mean that you shouldn't do something that is going to massively help the game at a macro level. If it helps everyone but hurts at the personal level, that's fine. That's important to the game. We have an industry sector that is bleeding itself dry at the moment, and ores that are just pouring through the game at a rate of knots. Ultimately, yeah, nerf the strip miners, nerf the mining barges, reduce how often standard mining belts spawn, and maybe you'd see more people using the NCS 1 to 4, more people undocking Ventures. I really think the Venture 3 and the Venture 4 should both be covert ops ships as well, purposely to push this idea, but hey, maybe that's just me. Your thoughts in the comments. Question 6. Could you do an event to give players the ship's Shanyue and Kanyue prototype? Many players lost the first login rewards, and several events in-game ask for those ships. Even if they're not essentials, would be nice to have them. Yeah, I kind of agree. I really agree. This was supposed to happen in July of 2021. Yeah, July 2021, that was supposed to happen. They said in January, oh yeah, we'll be adding all of this to the Scholar Point store in July, and then it just never freaking happened. The Yanjung, the Forgotten Faction. We will find a way for players to get these two ships, such as through Scholar Point Exchange, says Cloud. Cloud, just do it. All of that stuff's in the monthly login rewards on your first month anyway. Just put it in the Scholar Point store. Like, that's not a difficult thing to do. Just add it to the Scholar Point store with all the stuff that's there. You don't even have to add the new stuff. You don't even have to add the stuff that we've got missing. Just the basic weapon upgrade modules, the standard turrets that we have, and the two prototype ships. That's literally all you need to add. Maybe the skins if you're feeling sort of really spicy today. But I would love to see the actual Yanjung added, but it just doesn't seem like that's ever going to happen at this point in time, although I will be a very happy Benzie when it does. Simply add the existing stuff to the store ASAP. It's not difficult, and most people are just going to largely ignore it anyway, because they're not exactly popular ships, but for those who want them, at least there's a way to get them. And there's an actual use for Scholar Points, you know, outside of some really old skins for ships that most people don't really fly anymore. Question 7, I think. The overall overview lacks vital information for combat, especially for PvP. Yeah, sure, I mean, Vetemune seems to really be struggling. Bradbrick seems to really be struggling with the current overview, but do go on. Like the base angular transverse velocity. Oh my god. Okay, I feel like I'm gone Roger for a moment there. Right now, the only way to know those is to guess from the blue vector indicator of the tactical overview of individual ships. At low speeds, it's not a viable way and it can lead to fatal mistakes. Any plans to incorporate these infos to the overview? Wei Su, lead designer, the current overview interface can't display so much information. We'll display this feedback and try to figure out how to incorporate the information. Again, you're playing this on a mobile phone. Like, genuinely, even my Asus ROG 3 when I used to use it, that's a pretty big screen, but trying to fit all this information on there, my god, you're going to need to apply magnifying glasses to the front of your screen to, like, see all of this, unless you're playing on a bloody tablet or something. Ultimately, yeah, I kind of get it. This is another one of those, it's in EVE Online, why is it not in EVE Echoes? And for the most part, a lot of that I do agree with. If it's in EVE Online, why isn't it in EVE Echoes? And I look at that and ask, is there a good reason? The good reason here is we simply don't need it. Like, it's one of those things, if everyone has it, then what you do is you increase the skill floor whilst increasing the skill ceiling. You're sitting there saying to PvPers, you need to know about things like transverse velocity, angular velocity, base velocity. You need to understand how your tracking works at a fundamental level, and here are the actual numbers on screen to make all of that work. And if you understand it and your opponent doesn't, you have an innate advantage over them. In EVE Echoes, the ceiling is just as high, but the floor isn't as high. You're not expected to know this kind of stuff. Again, folks like Vetemune are absolutely wrecking it in PvP with turrets and things that this information is primarily used for without any issue whatsoever. It's not a tool you need. You're telling me you need this tool. It's vital information. Before someone says, oh, he doesn't say need. Vital. Vital means needed. Vital information for combat. It's not vital. People are getting by just fine without it. Adding it would clutter up the screen and just be extra nonsense. We don't need this. And I like the fact that they added the tactical overlay. I like the fact that we have things like the direction arrow, and I do wish that they would add the ranging circles to the tactical overview, because that is a very useful piece of information for everyone, PvP, PvE, and otherwise. Yeah, I even use it in exploration. Knowing the actual ranges of your weapons by red and orange rings, very, very useful. Things like your base angular and transverse velocity, no, come join me in EVE Online. If that's what you want to do, then come join me in EVE Online with that one. We do not need that in Echoes. Finally then, question number 8, nice big one, exploration and faction wargames. Oh, two things after my own heart. What are the future plans and intent to make these gameplay styles more engaging and lucrative for players? Wait for it, no plan. These are the only two types of gameplay that works well for small ship pilots, and we would appreciate additions that would continue to make our crafts lucrative and balanced. While exploration is decent, faction wargames is in a bad place. Exploration is not decent. Screw off that exploration is decent. No, it's not. We could use some sort of queue or tracker letting us know when the other players are looking for matches. This waiting blindly in queue for 30 minutes is really discouraging. There are items in the LP store we'd love to get, but it's impossible at this rate. Looking forward to what ideas you have for this in future. Now, I have some thoughts and opinions already, but let's see what Lansdott says. We've accumulated some experience in the faction wargames development. Some of the new content we're designing now actually takes reference from the faction wargames. At the same time, we'll continue to develop new content for faction wargames itself. So, the bottom line of this is that if you want people to play faction wargames, you need to make it exciting for them. It's not just adding new modes, it's making the gameplay feel relevant. And thus flying the same ships that you have no say over is not relevant. Like, there are ways you could balance this, but I think, honestly, allowing people to fly their own ships... This, again, is kind of one of those situations where EVE Online had a perfectly functional system that is admittedly getting an overhaul right now, and they had a perfectly functional system, and EVE Echoes kind of went, no, let's try it our own way, and their own way was an awesome idea and concept. It just failed to deliver on that. I think, honestly, at this point, they just need to add a mode that is essentially just standard duels in an arena, a la Faction Wargame Plexes, Warfare Plexes in EVE Online. You can pick any ship you like, and you just need to work around that. I would love to have a reason to actually use my worm, for example, in-game at all. But yeah, you've got to make faction wargames exciting, and so I think a tech-locked system, Tech 9, Tech 10, where you can fly different ships of those tech levels in different things, and obviously you need to consider how pirate faction ships are going to work with that. Ultimately, having a tech-locked faction wargames, I think, could be a way to do that. It's worth noting that this guy asks about exploration again, and Lance, like the majority of NetEase, just completely ignores it. Exploration just, yeah, the amount of issues I had just even talking to the developers about exploration when they first added the difficulty 5 boxes, just, they don't care. They do not care about exploration. It was something they added to the game to shut some people up, and now that it's in, they don't care. Because you and I, the people who are going out and exploring, we're not the big spenders. They don't care about us. They want to put more into the capital ships, the Force Auxiliaries, the Titans, when those eventually come, because people will pay big money for that, and it will help, it pays. It pays to go after the big stuff, and then suddenly you can do an event like CyberX where you sit there and charge like $250 for a Titan Nano Core, and people will go crazy and they will buy it in droves, and you make a lot of money for NetEase. That's the plan here. Exploration does not make money for the developers, and you can sit there and say, oh yeah, but think about all those people who would actually subscribe. They don't care about subs. Subs aren't the important thing. It's the big, expensive purchases. That is why they are pushing us all into dreadnoughts and carriers, and why they're now moving towards super carriers and capitals. They want the game to be completely carriers and capitals and super caps so that they can push you for more spending. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. There are so many good ideas as to how to fix exploration. I did a video talking about my top 3 ideas on that. Do go check that out and let me know what you think on those. But the bottom line is, it is not going to happen for a very long time, if at all, because it just doesn't make money for NetEase at this point. Ultimately, we might hit a point, and this is the only time when it'll happen, we may hit a point where NetEase finally looks at player numbers and goes, oh, actually that's getting a bit low, maybe we need to add some more content, to the lower tiers just to get more players back in, so that those players can come in, join in, and then become the capital ship pilots that we want them to be. That's the only way this stuff's ever going to happen. Anyway, I think that is the end of this dev Q&A. Nice long bumper version here for us all to go through. Hopefully that has given you some food for thought, given you an idea of how game development works, what's coming in EVE Echoes, why it's a good idea or a bad idea, and hopefully people will stop asking for bloody buffs to mining. It really doesn't need it. It needs nerfs. It needs significant nerfs. Anyway, or a significant overhaul at the very least. I've done so many videos on that one. If you're confused and you're getting angry and you want to run into the comment section and go, oh, he like goes on about this but doesn't explain it. Yeah, because I explained it like 6 times already in 30-minute long videos. Go watch those. Anyway, folks, those are my thoughts and opinions. Please do let me know you're subscribed if you haven't already. Hit that like button. Really, 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 really does help the channel. You have no idea. Please, if you're on YouTube and you're enjoying any video by any creator, hit like. It makes the world of difference. Everyone really helps. Anyway, begging over. Happy sailing and see you in New Eden.